Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden. Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your source for all things gardening and homesteading. We're back here today with Brent from Donna's Farms, and we're going to talk a little bit about succession planning. So we've talked about a lot of different things so far on this channel. A lot of core basic concepts for growing food, for just, having your own homestead. But we've never really talked about succession planning. And, before we pressed record today, I mentioned that I'm not very good at this concept. And I think that's because succession planning takes planning.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing in a fast-moving society. Mm-hmm. People are busy. But if it's a concept that people can begin to put into their mind and maybe learn and start to implement, even if they only start with one crop, it's just like everything else. You got to start somewhere.
Yep.
Then you might begin to see like the benefits and the success rate of like your harvest go up.
Yeah.
What is succession planning?
So in the gardening world yourself, if you plant everything at one time, everything will come in at one time. You're going to have this massive peak. And that was the thing we learned. It was hard to learn. You plant all your squash, you plant all this, and all of a sudden you got thousands of pounds coming in. You're like, what do I do with the 12 plants of squash I did? Okay. You're a family of 4 or 5 or 6, whatever. You plant 4 squash plants, you're going to be overrun with squash. You put 10 tomatoes, you put 12 heads of lettuce, you're going to do all this stuff. You're going to be so overrun. So the succession gives you an even flow throughout the season. Some things you can't do in succession, really. Tomatoes, not really.
Yeah, it's
squash. There's one thing we would succession okra, because okra gets 10, 12 feet high. Who wants to pick it, right? So it gives you an even crop distribution because every plant has a life cycle, right? So, for example, my best thing to tell people how to succession is easy to understand with squash. Because you plant your zucchini plants, you plant your yellow squash, whatever you want, and you've got 10 or 12 of them. You take your whole bed up at one time. They all come in. They take 2 feet by 2 feet at least, a massive area to cover. And then you get your squash in, and you got 10 pounds, 20 pounds. You're giving it away. You can't give it away. You get frustrated. You're tired of it. So planning, yes, but not like hard and fast rules. There's some nuances to it. Yes, you can have a crop plan, and you can get detailed hard into it, and these apps and this and that, but you don't need that as a home gardener. The easiest way to understand your squash, it's a direct seed normally. You're not going to transplant unless you're really trying to push it early. Most people buy the seeds, put them in the ground, they come up, okay? So the rule of thumb I tell people is in 4s, right? If you do 2 plants, you need I tell people at least 3 or 4 plants for pollination purposes. So if you get your zucchini in, they get like little tapered ends on them, they weren't pollinated enough.
Yep.
Same with watermelon, same with this. You have to have enough pollination, and the pollination normally happens in the morning before 9 or 10. If the bees, whatever, has to visit them enough to pollinate the plant. I think it's 3 or 4 times per squash. So you plant your first seed, they come up. We always netted them to protect them till they start to flower, actually. So we cover them landscape with a cloth or something to protect the plants, to give them a heads up. So plant your first seeds. As soon as they come up, then they come up. When you see your first flower on those plants, plant your next round, okay? So you have your first round up, they're starting to flower, your next round's planted, okay? When the second set starts to flower, because squash are like 55 days, they're pretty quick. And you'll start seeing flowers within a month. 30-ish days, I think, 40, I don't remember the next number. So the first one comes up, they start to flower, plant your next round, okay? Then the next round starts, so by the time the second round starts to flower, the first one is full production, like going hardcore. Like when you see your first flower on these ones, okay? Not when they're like full flower, like when you first start seeing your first flowers, okay? Then when the second one starts to flower, put your third succession in, okay? So now you've got the first one's going strong, the second one's starting to come on, and your third ones are in the ground, okay? By the time the third one starts to flower, you start your 4th round. Pull the first round out because you want to keep it at peak production, right? So you plant your first one, starts to flower, you plant your second round. The second one starts to flower, you plant your third round. So the first 2 are now producing, right? Pretty much.
Right.
The first round is starting to get on the back tail end of it. Okay, so the third one flowers. you plant your fourth round. When you plant your fourth round, go back and pull your first round out of the ground for disease purposes, get rid of them, right? Because disease gets in the soil, the squash vine borers lay their eggs. So that way, the four pattern is how we did one row here, the next row, the next row, the next row, right? And you could go back and plant the first row again, but like for example, like brassicas, the disease pressure builds up. Certain things they pull the soil, they eat too much of, so you need to remove things. So you can get 2 crops out of it. You may need to go back and amend again. Yeah. You may need to go back things like that.
Question but the round that of comes 4, to mind, like so, for somebody like me who I'm not planting in a row, I'm planting in a lot of small beds. Is it still succession planting if I'm planting? Maybe I plant 4 here, or a few here, and then when that happens, what if I plant a few over here?
The problem you can run into is, even in a raised bed garden, you need to have some type of rotation, okay? Then the families. You got your cucurbit family, or I forget the name, for the squash, cucumbers are all the same family, okay? They have certain diseases that always affect them. Your nightshade family, which your potato, tomato, eggplant. They have the seeds look alike, they are going to be the same family. Yeah. Your alliums, which are heavy feeders, your onions, your garlic, and things like that. Your brassica family, the mustard, they all look the same. Like think of the seeds look alike, they're the same family. So the gourd and squash family, that's where you're at. So try and maybe, depending on what the bed is, maybe you only do 2 or 3 of them, right? You may not be able to do 4 successions with them. So it's kind of a...
But you can, I don't necessarily have to have them all in the same bed.
No. But the best thing to do, there's succession planting, but you just don't want to keep planting everywhere because you don't know where everything's been planted and you're replanting and things. So the first step is to maybe have a crop rotation plan. Like, okay, this year I'm doing this in this bed. So I forget what should follow what, but there's certain things you don't follow with other things. I forget. I think potatoes don't follow onions, something like that. I don't remember what follow. Some things shouldn't follow other things because they're heavy feeders and they deplete the soil too much from certain things. So once you have a master, like, okay, I want to grow these things. Know what you want to grow for the most part. Don't worry, there's some random things you can put in there. This year, this bed has this. This is this. This is the very basic rule of rotating the bed. So there's a rest period between them. Okay, even if most people 2 rounds, or if they did 3 rounds of squash, they're done. You figure if you do the first round, you got 55 days. The second round is maybe 20 days, 30 days behind that one. So you're 3 months into it, and that last third round is going to produce till June, July, and you're over it by that. Yeah, most people are tired. So you're okay with that. 2 successions would be fine, maybe, but don't put it all, fill the bed up at one time. It's okay to leave some dead space in the bed for the next round. Keep it covered, keep it protected from weeds, seeds, and grass blowing in.
But one of the main goals of doing this is to essentially give yourself the opportunity to extend the harvest.
Yes.
So instead of trying to take it all at once and hope that you can do something with it, you're able to harvest and use a little bit, maybe put some away depending on what it is, process it, and then repeat the process as the other successions come in, no matter how many you do. And I think that's really important because, like, for right now, even though like tomatoes are not the best thing for succession planting because there is a narrow window of opportunity, but right now my kitchen table is 9 foot long and about 3 to 4 foot of it is just covered in tomatoes, and they're just in the lineup of when we have time to do what we like to do with them. And sometimes we lose some. We have to throw them out because we just didn't get to it fast enough. So
tomatoes are a thing. Like you said, you want them in the ground. The rule of thumb is like potatoes. Valentine's Day in the ground. Tomatoes, potatoes in the ground. Then for that, what we would do if they start to go bad, cut out the bad spot, throw them in a pot in the freezer, and we get the pot full or whatever bag. Cook them down, and then you can store them in the freezer. Make a big batch of whatever, and you pull them out and do something with them. That way, we don't lose them throughout the course of the season. You're just throw them in the freezer. It doesn't matter if you're going to cook them down. It doesn't matter. Process them to whatever you want to do at that point. That way you're not like losing them, on a smaller scale, because there's nothing worse than having it and what do you do with it and it goes bad and you just like, don't throw the whole thing away. Take that chunk that went bad, cut it out with a knife, throw the rest of it in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. With the rest of them, just kind of build up. Once you get enough up, then you make a pot of soup or something with them.
Do whatever it is that you want to do with them.
Yeah.
So not only is succession planting good for like preserving your harvest and making it easier to deal with, because at the end of the day, if we're growing this stuff, if the whole practice of it is not sustainable and we're wasting more we put in all this money and this time, because gardening is not necessarily a cheap endeavor.
No.
Waste is not something that we want. So we're helping prevent that. But I think there's a side to succession planning that most people don't realize, and that's I think it can really help you when you're focusing on disease and pest resistance.
100%. Like you can see it. You're not overwhelmed. Your garden's not full of 12 squash plants or 20 of this. You can build up to that point, but starting small, anything takes 10,000 hours to be an expert, right? I've killed more plants. I tell people, I kill plants. I've killed way more than you have. I promise I've killed more than you have. Trust me, I sprayed a neem oil, something new to try on something for disease, and I burned a bunch of baby plants. It was like 8 or 9 trays of tomatoes. I was like, oh my gosh. Like just, just designed for, was looked at later, designed for mature plants. But if you do 2 or 3 plants, you can keep track of things better, right? You're smaller scale, you're this, you can see them. You can see it grows better. You're not just, your bed's not overwhelmed. You're not overwhelming yourself, and you're going to enjoy it more. You're doing a little, you get more practice in too. Yep. The sessions will give you a little more practice. The first ones didn't work, just try again. Put some more seeds.
You're also learning, you're learning the season.
Yes.
So you're learning the full,
run the gambit.
You're pushing the envelope on both ends of the spectrum, early and late potentially.
Yeah.
Something that comes to mind, and I don't know if you remember this, way back whenever the Giving Field used to do their organic fair.
Yeah.
We both talked inside the cafeteria, I think, one time to a group of people.
Yes.
And Dr. Bob Randall talked that day.
Yeah.
And the reason this comes to mind is because you said your favorite example of succession planning is squash.
Yeah.
And in that talk that day, he brought up a very interesting concept, which I still think is really important. He talked about how squash vine borers are obviously a very trying thing for growing common squash. So he talked about, trying different varieties, out of the box varieties. He specifically that day recommended the Seminole variety, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
But it was a very thick stemmed. But one of the things that he talked about was succession planting your squash, because you could potentially succession plant your squash and beat the life cycle of the squash vine borer, whereas you may plant some early. You may get hit by the moths, and the borer, but then your later successions, may push outside the timing of that squash vine borer. So he talked about, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, so you're protecting your harvest in a sense. And if your first ones begin to show signs, you have the opportunity to eliminate it, reduce the population, help break the life cycle.
Yep.
So I thought that was a really cool thing. So it's not always about what we're trying to get out of it. It's also about controlling your growing space, your little mini ecosystem.
Yeah, and there's even varieties of squash that are big farms. My buddy Garrett down at Gunnerman Acres, they would plant sacrificial crops, ones that they knew, Blue Hubbards, I forget which one, vine borers are more attracted to as a sacrifice row on the edge. To keep them out of the main field. There's a native one from Texas, Mexico area called Tatumi. Don't quote me.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Real thin vine, and the borers can't really bore into it because it's so thin. It doesn't have the big hollow core. So there's some varieties that do a little better. People want more zucchinis that are spineless than have little, but the spines are a way to protect the plant from certain things necessarily. So if you can keep the bed covered, the soil, don't leave the soil exposed, because the larvae can't drop into the ground. So if you can kind of keep landscape fabric, something exposed in the soil, for example, some people put heavy straw down, right? Straw is a good place for the wolf spiders to hide, and they can be beneficial. So there's things you can do on that. Like I said, we talked before, the shadow of the farmer. Go walk. You'll see the vine. The vine borer moth is the flightiest moth I've ever seen. I chased one probably for an hour before. They're orange and black, and when you see them, you know exactly what they look like. You could pick them out across a field, and you're like, there's one of them. And they go down and lay one egg here, one egg there. They're not in clusters. They're not this. So like I said, be observant. If the plant is infected, pull it. Try and find it, get it out of there. It's just part. You're going to lose some. It's just part of it, and people get upset with it. But if you do, like I said, the successions, or maybe you plant a variety that you're just a little different, it may not be as susceptible. They don't like it as much. The crop rotating in your master plan of your garden.
And if you're hopefully maybe taking the time to take some notes, or if you're like me, I'm more of a mental note person.
Note, jot it down on your phone.
But just like being able to recognize, and you might in that moment you might not realize like the meaning of like, hey, the plants I planted here at this time weren't susceptible or were not affected.
Yep.
And then next year you do it again, and then the same pattern arises, and you're like, hey, like now we see what we need to do.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a lot of other crops I think that, like green beans.
So around here, we figured your nightshade family, you're not going to succession really. Your cucumber, your squash, watermelon's not really. You're going to get 1 or 2 crops most of the time because they need the heat.
Yeah.
Your fall squash, you can grow throughout the summer pretty much as well. But they need space. You're talking a 15 by 15 area to grow. That's why we grew the smaller variety. You get more per square foot. But vine borers love them. But you can prevent that too as they grow. Cover different areas. So they put more roots on to help. If it does areas affect, you can kind of isolate it. Lettuce is a big one in the wintertime. A lot of your brassica family, like the leafy ones, the kale, the collards, we would succession them some, like 2 of them, 2 plantings. But that was about it. Not a really big one. Swiss chard you can pick on forever.
I still got a Swiss chard from last winter.
Yeah, so your root crops you'll succession somewhat. A good rule of thumb on root crops, we would do radishes, beets, and carrots kind of work together on germination timing. So we would plant, say, a bed of beets, right? And I put some radish seeds at the end of the French breakfast. And when they would come up first, I knew the beets should be coming up soon, and I would take my flame weeder and flame weed the bed to prevent weed suppression. So it kind of helps sterilize the bed. And beets would come before carrots normally. Anyway, we can get to talk about the nuances of growing those root crops around here because our soils are always compact and stuff on another episode. But succession planting them because you figure carrots are a one-shot crop. So instead of planting a big bed, maybe do 2 rows every week. And thin those rows out. Because how many carrots do you want to eat? You're going to buy a 2-pound bag every week of carrots?
And they hold up pretty well.
They hold very well.
They hold up really well, but still at the same time, like it's not a staple on the table every single day.
Beets, radishes, things like that. You can grow, like I said, with the radishes, we grow one probably 3 crops of the daikons because they would store. You can store them properly and you can hold them.
Radish too, like if you plant like a whole bumper crop of radish, I mean, most of them are gonna go to maturity in like 30 to 40 days.
The French breakfast, the little cherry bells,
So you're not really paying attention to what you're doing. And you're like, holy cow, look at all these radish. What am I going to do with all these? Like, and then you turn around and realize they don't have a long shelf life, on a lot of the varieties. So
you see 30, 60 days on something, but you're going to, or I should say something to go back. Only 10 seeds? Yeah. 10 seeds is a lot of squash. You're not planting 400, 500 feet of squash. You're planting 4 at a time. So a dozen seeds, high quality seeds will do you wonders. That one package over, buying the quarter pound of them. You don't need it.
There's a lot of people that buy an abundance of seeds.
And you're wasting a ton.
Yeah.
Like I would spend $2,000 to $3,000 on seeds. But I'm buying high quality seeds. Scale. I'm playing a much larger scale. And sometimes I would spend more because it was that much of a cost break. For example, when we did cucumbers, we did a 90-foot row, which our greenhouse bed was 96-foot house, 24 by 96. We had 3-foot buffer on each end, so it was a 90-foot row, 90 transplant cucumbers per bed, a foot apart. And we would succession those kind of like the squash. So that's a lot. I'm doing 90 plants where, 4 or 5 cucumbers on a cattle panel is a lot of cucumbers.
Yeah.
The green beans growing a lot. How many green beans do you want to eat and cook? So it's just kind of, and a lot of times they'll tell you that you should get an idea of how much it'll yield from some of the seed things. I don't know if they tell you that or not. I don't remember. But, I like running pole beans over bush beans because it's easier to pick. 2, you can grow them up with something and plant something underneath them for shade. And there's different, succession like that of how to intercrop and things. but it's easier to pick as they grow produce more over a longer period. You know, like I got to the end where I like the Asian long beans because you get way more yield off of them per square foot on a small scale, and you know. But yeah, like I said, how much you think you want to grow and what you should grow is probably two different things. I mean, three eggplant plants, 4 or 5 peppers.
Realistically, like thinking about like how much of this do I actually use?
Yep.
Over not over just like not like how much do I use like each time I use it? Like how often do I actually use these items? How often do I go and do I buy them? You know, if I buy a bag of onions, like how often do I buy them? Like onions are one you could definitely. There's enough time to succession plant onions. Now, like your sizes will definitely vary.
Yeah.
But you could definitely plant one like the moment the onion transplants come out.
Yep.
Right before Thanksgiving, and you could probably plant. You can theoretically, they say you can plant them all the way up into January here.
That's pushing it. Yeah.
That's pushing it. But I think like you could definitely do like November and probably some in December with about a 30-day gap. And
yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but even though they store for a pretty long time, but that's a big difference depending on what type of onion you're growing, because not all onions have the same storage life.
No, definitely. You know, yeah. I've even seen it when we've done a succession with brassicas, and we plant the first one. I think we were running a 50-foot bed of our. We did broccoli, cauliflower, whatever it was. I forget with the three. I had it set up. I'm gonna have to go back and look, but it was a 2-week gap successioning. So the first one came in because they're one cut and done, right? Well, we planted the first one, came out, boom, first in August. We're running our successions, right? And the winter comes around, things slow down. You get a cold stretch where that first one's going.
Yeah. And
the second one catches up to it. You know, so you can plan the best you can with the successions, but sometimes Mother Nature has her own way of going, this one's got cold, they slowed down, this one caught up to it was warm, you know.
We can always have good intentions, but it doesn't mean they're going to go exactly like we intend.
Carrots, you can push carrots starting in August. So we would plant the first round of carrots in like late August, September. The trick is you pour the seeds in thick because you might get 40% germination on them, which is fine because most carrots take about 60 days. So you get them in like late August, early September, you're in October, November, right? But you pour them in thick and just thin them out. So if you say you did carrots once a month, you can actually go carrots from say 1st of September to March. Like late March, you'll get them in June. Now the June carrots you're harvesting may not taste the best because it's hot. They've been stressing, but you can get carrots.
But you can still find a way to utilize them.
Yeah, 100%. You can cook them. You can do different things. But people always say, "Well, this is part of this off subject," but stuff gets sweet in the wintertime because it puts sugars in to preserve it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the wintertime, plants are also far less stressed.
100%.
So when plants are stressed, they use resources, sugars, and things to survive. So it's no different than us standing outside in the garden when it's blistering hot and sweating. We're running out of resources, got to replenish.
Yeah. But like if you're in a succession plant, start small in your garden. Figure out what do I eat? What do you buy all the time? Are you eating 2 heads of broccoli and cauliflower a week? Are you eating a big salad in the wintertime? It's hot. People want salad when it's hot, but lettuce doesn't grow when it's hot around here.
Yeah.
We're not temperate, you know. The salad bowl in the wintertime is actually Yuma, Arizona. There's miles and miles of acres of lettuce coming out of Yuma. But then it switches to California in the summertime where it's temperate, right? Even then, we bought less in the summertime. It's bitter because it's been stressed. Let's get super astringent. But figure what you buy normally on the most part, you know, and go, okay, I buy peppers every other week. Okay, then maybe 2 or 3 pepper plants is all you need. You know, 2 different varieties, this or that. Because I promise, 1 jalapeno plant will produce more jalapenos than you can grow or you're going to deal with. And then if you put it next to your sweet peppers are probably going to get hot.
Yeah.
So there's some, figure what you eat first. Do I need 12 heads of lettuce a week? Do I need 2 or 3? Or can I pick the outer leaves? Like when we grew celery, we can cut the whole heads, or you can pick the outer leaves off and keep the center growing, right?
Yeah.
So you get more abundance on the crops, like your kale and collards. You pick the outer leaves, or you keep them growing. How much kale do I eat? How much Swiss chard do I eat? Collards were huge at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and after that, collards stopped growing. And people didn't care, so we'd plant enough for a big Thanksgiving bumper crop, and then Christmas, and it was like that last second would carry us on through.
Yeah, so everybody has their own personal like habits and like and needs. And that's kind of where succession planning can make you
Yeah.
more successful. And I think, like, for me, well, in 2026, we're dealing with so many more people with more compact, small spaces. And I think that utilizing this concept, even though it's kind of harder in a way because you are dealing in a smaller space, I think it's even more important because I oftentimes feel that people are not utilizing their space to its full potential. They're not getting, they don't think they can grow as much as they actually can. So they're getting very limited amounts out of a small garden bed when they could be getting an abundant amount with a little bit better planning, succession planning.
And then go back to the squash example, the rule of thumb, if you put zucchinis 2 by 2 square feet, like at least, right, and they start getting crowded. There's a new that's new now, but it's been out for a while. Take them vertical in a tomato cage, and I've done it. It actually works quite well in an end. So it actually helps with the vine borers too.
I've seen that.
And so it does work with the vine because the vine borers lay their eggs close to the soil. Right, this is the soil. They lay close to the bottom. So that when the worm or whatever the grub eats enough of the inside, it drops to the soil. So if it only falls 3 or 4 inches of the soil, it can land softly. But if you're growing that squash vertically, like stake it up, and you're trimming the leaves off like you would like a tomato plant, and growing it vertically, there's tons of videos online about this.
The person that comes to mind that I've
the
seen
older cage,
the Pawpaw Ridge.
Yes, Pawpaw Ridge. Yeah, Pawpaw Ridge guy. Yeah, that he really that video of his blew up big time. I think it works.
And I almost feel like if I remember correctly, like that practice even almost made the stem kind of more like hardened.
Yeah, it stiffened up more,
and not necessarily woody, but it was like. I don't remember, but it was more hardened, which would make it less susceptible to a boring.
Yeah, because it sits on the ground as the squash gets older. Zucchini starts vining more. Yellow squash didn't quite do it, but zucchini will start running one direction or another. So across that whole thing, the vine bar has a chance to lay close to the ground. So if you get off the ground 6 inches or so, and it grows up, you can protect that with some foil or something. You can wrap around that. As it gets taller, just cut the extra dead leaves off. It's going to keep growing up. And if it's off the ground, it's not going to lay its eggs in there as much. So there's definitely now squash bugs and things like that. Even then, you're getting in the air, more predators can get in there too. That more birds can get in there and eat these bugs. Versus if it's on the ground and protected, right? They kind of want to run and hide, but you get it. So there's pros and cons to it, but it's definitely a way to increase density of plants in a smaller area and still get production and actually make the succession probably easier on you with a little more work. Don't get me wrong, it takes a little more work because you got to go out there and maybe tie it to the stake or tomato cage it up.
Prune
a little bit, but I think you'll be less frustrated as a gardener because like a lot of people just put it in the ground, they forget about it, they don't do something with it, and that time they go back, the disease or something's taken over too much.
Yep.
Airflow helps prevent disease. So getting it vertical helps prevent diseases more. Things can't hide in there. So there's pros and cons to it, but it's definitely an interesting way to grow them, and it could definitely help tighter per square foot in your successions. Like I said, not everything in successions. Your brassica, some of your brassicas like your broccoli and cauliflowers your flowering brassicas like that. Leafy greens really don't. Your root crops, but you can interplant at that point too. If your squash are really tall and vertical, you could put something underneath them, like maybe some shade or something.
Yeah.
So you can actually get double up on the crop kind of thing. If you like radishes or breakfast radish, French breakfast ones are nice. Then eggplant, peppers. Here's the thing about peppers I found. Most people buy peppers in the spring, and then you buy your peppers in March. You put them in the ground. They take 90 days from transplant, whatever, and it's hot by now, and the peppers get smaller. So what I started doing or tried to do was start my peppers in July or August, put them in the ground and overwinter them. Because if you can overwinter your peppers, they're fully established plants. Yep. In the springtime, when it starts warming up in February, you're going to start getting peppers. And the year we did it really well, we got massive flamingo peppers, like full big bell peppers because it was temperate enough.
There's no more need to exert the energy to grow.
No.
It's flower and fruit. Flower and
Same
fruit.
thing. I ran an experiment with jalapenos in one of the greenhouses. 3 years. 3 years we grew them. In the wintertime, they got cold. I chopped them down to like a stick about 18 inches high. Just a stick. They started coming back in the greenhouse, and they started flourishing. It was like 6 plants, 7 plants, and one 6 foot by 3 bed. And then our small house, we had in our shorter house, we had 3 by 6 foot beds. So we grow things we didn't need much of, like fennel, but they would still grow, but we don't need a full big bed out of. And I had them in there, chopped them down. They grew back, and I got disease on them. It was like the black fungus. I forget what it was. It was cool and damp. It started getting on there, so I just chopped them all down again, and they came back again, like with a vengeance of wanting to like put on fruit and grow because the root system was established. It was big root system by the time I pulled them out, but they were producing crazy, like loaded with jalapenos quickly for us. So peppers are kind of a cool thing if you can overwinter them. If you grow them this year, let them grow. Don't let them. They're going to stress in the heat. They're going to get small. When the fall comes around, they get a little bit bigger. When it gets cold, if you can protect them, cut them back to like a 18, 24-inch stem. Protect them through the wintertime. They'll start to come back some. A little low house over them or something, low tunnel. And then January, February, March, they'll start flourishing. In late March, early April, you'll get some crazy good peppers out of them.
Yeah.
And so about a year and a half on them, and then after that disease starts to set in. But like I said, that was a fun experiment to push the jalapenos for about almost 3 years in the house. But so they get really woody, big stems on them. But it was pretty cool to see how they were like pretty flourishing.
That's cool.
On that.
Is there anything about succession planning that we haven't covered?
Start small. I mean, you're gonna not need near as much as you think once you start doing it. You can always increase for later. Like I said, if you start small in any garden and succession a little bit, you won't get as frustrated. It may take a little more energy out of you versus planting everything at one time. But then everything comes at one time.
The reward will be great.
The bumper is huge. You get this massive build up and a drop off, but consistent, steady production out of your home little garden where you can use it up and you're not wasting things versus like I got 40 pounds of squash. I can't give them away. Everyone's tired. And that's what happens every year. The pawpaw goes out and plants a 20-foot bed of squash, and everyone's got a ton of them. And you're like, "What do I do?"
It's hard. It's hard to give away produce sometimes. It's hard to sell produce sometimes.
The cabbage like that, the broccolis, you can get 2 or 3 successions out of them. Do an early one, and take if there's a little bit of a gap, it's fine. You'll learn how often you need to plant them. It's okay to have a break sometimes. Maybe you're tired of eating cabbage, and then look for some of the smaller varieties. Like I said, some that maybe cabbage eat maybe a pound or two versus the Dutch babies that get 15 pounds and you're just like, they're cool, the giant ones, but look for smaller varieties of things, especially in the home garden. Not necessarily compact patio plants per se, but maybe your tomatoes, grow some indeterminates, but grow them up vines. You don't need 10 cherry tomato plants, I promise. Get some cooler varieties, something that you'll eat that tastes good. Don't just necessarily stick with the tried and trues. Figure something that works in your area, There's other people out there, but the biggest help people no matter what advice you get from any farmer, it's always contextual to what they do. And nothing's hard and fast. When I grow in Finette, what grows in Silsby is not going to be the same thing. Yeah. It's just every soil is different. Everything's different.
You can take advice and trial and learn, fail, succeed. Cool. Yeah. I think that will wrap things up for us on this episode.
Yeah.
So appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Compost Pile.
Yeah.
Sweet.